Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful stories out there often use the fewest words? Well, today we're diving into a seriously fascinating piece of source material. It's a highly specific storyboard framework for an animated short film called The Awakening of the Lazy Genius. And what makes this so incredibly compelling isn't just the story itself, but the unbelievably strict rules placed on the creator. It literally strips away all of our usual storytelling crutches and forces us to rely 100% on what we can see. We're going to break down this entire 8-scene sequence to figure out exactly how you can build a profound narrative using nothing but action, environment, and visual cues.
So here's the roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the ultimate visual constraint. Then, establishing the rut. Third, the silent catalyst. Fourth, building the microhabit. And we'll wrap up with the visual payoff.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the ultimate visual constraint. No explanations allowed.
What's wild here is just how incredibly strict these rules are. Think about it. If you're trying to explain a complex idea, your very first instinct is probably to just talk it out, right? Or maybe throw some text up to make sure everybody gets the point. But the creator of this 3-minute animation is explicitly forbidden from doing any of that. Look at these constraints. Do not explain the story. You can't use phrases like, "this story shows," or "the lesson is." There's absolutely no narrative strategy allowed. No text-only screens, not even a plain white background. You have to rely entirely on real scenes and animated visuals with actual motion. It's the ultimate show-don't-tell challenge, basically forcing the creator to think like a classic silent film director. If you can't tell us what's happening or how the character feels, you have to find a way to make us literally see it.
Moving right along to Section 2, establishing the rut, visualizing laziness.
So, with that no-telling rule firmly locked in, the first 2 scenes have to visually establish our main character, Ryan, and his baseline laziness without uttering a single syllable. And the way it hooks us right from the start is just brilliant. We open with a timeline. It's 7 a.m., and not 1, not 2, but 5 alarm clocks are ringing loudly. We get this funny camera zoom in motion, and Ryan's immediate reaction? He just chucks a pillow over the alarms and goes right back to sleep. Then we cut to noon, and he's just playing games all day. This sequence is so good because we don't need a voiceover spoon-feeding us Ryan was a lazy boy. The 5 alarms instantly tell us this is a chronic problem. And throwing the pillow? That tells us he's in total denial.
And the environment really steps up to do the heavy lifting here. Going into Scene 2, without a drop of narration, the room itself becomes a character. The storyboard demands a messy room, junk food scattered absolutely everywhere, chips flying through the air, and a game controller in constant motion. This isn't just a static picture of a messy bedroom. The instructions actually demand motion. Those flying chips and that moving controller prove Ryan is actively engaged in his own distraction. He's stuck in a deep, chaotic rut. As a viewer, you take one look at that flying junk food and you instantly, intuitively understand his state of mind. It's cluttered, it's unhealthy, and it's totally unfocused.
Which brings us to Section 3, the silent catalyst, the turning point.
Every great story, and really every journey of personal transformation, needs that spark, right? A catalyst. Something has to physically push the character out of their comfort zone. Scene 3 delivers this huge emotional turning point purely through an environmental shift. So instead of some moody internal monologue about feeling inadequate, the story just drops Ryan right into a school assembly. He's sitting in the audience, watching his friend win a prize on stage. That's it. Just this stark, undeniable contrast between his friend's public achievement and Ryan's own hidden stagnation.
And this is where the magic of visual storytelling really shines. The storyboard relies entirely on Ryan's face to communicate this massive internal crisis. The prompt simply says, Ryan looks shocked and embarrassed. Think about how much complex information is packed into those 2 emotions. The shock implies he's suddenly realizing just how far behind he's fallen. And the embarrassment? That shows he actually cares. He wants to be better. We don't get a thought bubble saying, wow, I need to change my life. We just see the color drain from his face. Maybe his eyes go wide. Maybe he slumps down in his chair. That entirely nonverbal reaction becomes the engine for the rest of the explainer.
All right, Section 4, building the microhabit, the friction of change.
Because let's face it, transforming your life isn't just an overnight magic trick, and the storyboard perfectly captures the friction of building new habits in Scenes 4 and 5. It doesn't just magically jump from the assembly to Ryan being a genius. First, we get Step 1, the funny fails. He tries to study, his phone rings, he gets distracted, and boom, he's sleeping again. It's honestly highly relatable. But then we hit Step 2, the intervention. He starts incredibly small with a 10-minute timer. And finally, Step 3, we actually see slight improvement.
This visual progression is so vital because it shows us that change is a messy process of trial, error, and eventual systematization.
I actually want to pause here for a second. Ask yourself, how often have you needed a micro-habit, something as simple as setting a 10-minute timer, just to break through your own wall of distraction? Just 10 minutes. By showing that physical timer ticking down, the animation takes this super abstract concept of focus and turns it into a tangible visual object. We see the numbers ticking. We see Ryan staying in his seat. That timer literally becomes his anchor, letting us witness his slight improvement without anyone needing to announce it over a microphone.
And that leads us to Section 5, the visual payoff, showing success. This is where all that groundwork pays off, beautifully wrapping up in scenes 6 through 8. The storyboard validates his journey using fantastic environmental storytelling. Just compare these two scenes in your mind for a second. Back in Scene 2, we had the messy room, the junk food, the chaotic flying chips. Now contrast that with Scene 6. The room is totally clean, Ryan is sitting with confident focus, and maybe most importantly, the lighting is actually brighter. The creator uses the literal illumination of the physical room to symbolize the illumination of Ryan's mind. You absolutely do not need a narrator declaring, "Ryan was finally organized and happy." The bright light and the clean desk tell your brain everything it needs to know.
Then, the whole thing just culminates beautifully. In Scene 7, Ryan wins a small competition of his own. People clap, he smiles, he's finally achieved the exact thing that shocked him into action back in Scene 3. But Scene 8 is the true masterstroke. It's a perfect mirror image of the very first hook of the animation. Ryan wakes up early, he turns off a single alarm. Not 5, just 1. And he immediately gets to work. We see this complete 180-degree shift in his behavior, perfectly bookended by the simple, quiet action of how he interacts with his alarm clock.
And the script actually closes out with this absolute non-negotiable directive for the final frame. No explanation, just visual success. By sticking rigidly to these constraints from the very first second to the last, the audience doesn't just understand Ryan's transformation, we feel the weight of it. We watched his struggle, we felt the friction, and we witnessed the environment physically shift around him. The visual evidence is just undeniable.
So, considering how powerfully a messy room, a bag of flying chips, or just a shift in lighting can tell an entire story, I want to leave you with this to chew on today. If your life, your daily routine was animated right now without a single word of narration, what would your visuals reveal? Would we see a chaotic room and 5 snoozed alarms? Or would we see the bright lighting and the ticking 10-minute timer of someone actively building their focus? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.